If you are able to turn your camera on, you might want to be in a position where you can put it on a gallery mode. It really helps to build community and be engaged when you see other faces listening and speaking. So I invite you to do that. Um, and we will get started. So we are recording, just to let everybody know. So if you do have to hop out, if you wanted to come back later and listen for a second time to the dialogue and conversation, you can do that as well. So we will be sending that out as soon as we convert that over to a viewable link later in the week. Um, Welcome everyone to our September Human Experience speaker, and I'm really excited to introduce Toshira Garraway in a little bit. But as a way of introduction to what our series is, we have lots of new faces on here, and it's just really a joy to look at this gallery. You students may not know all the faces on here, but it's really great to see the full representation of our social work department. And so we've got undergraduate students. We've got adult and professional students who are undergraduate students as well, taking some online classes. We've got some master's students on here, graduate students in our social work program. We've got faculty on our call, and we've got spouses of faculty on the call. So hey, we've got everybody here, and it just is really exciting to see people taking time out to come and listen to stories. Social work is a competency-based profession, meaning we as social workers, as we go out into the field and we begin to do our practice, we need to demonstrate that we can do social work. So while you're in school, much of your education has been about demonstrating to your professors that you understand the content, that you have knowledge about social work. But then there becomes a part where you have to do the social work. You've got to be out in community. You got to be amongst people. You got to be interacting with families and individuals, communities, groups. And when we do that work along similarities, sometimes that can be easy things to do. What can be difficult is when we are trying to practice across differences, when we're trying to understand somebody's lived experience, somebody's positionality, somebody's state of mind, what they might be thinking, just historically, their experiences. That's difficult to do. It's not impossible for us to do, but it's difficult to do that across differences. Racial differences, ethnic differences, language differences, religious differences, gender identity differences. When it's not your lived experience, it can be difficult to do because we bring our lived experience into the work. And if we're not careful, we take our perspectives, our worldview, our way of understanding interactions and history, and we have a way of putting that into the work that we do. And so social work has a competency to help us develop a professional identity around anti-racism, diversity, equity, and inclusion, that we can develop an ADEI professional identity so that we try to minimize the harm that we may do as we interact with communities, individuals, families, especially when again, across those differences. So our competency that's on that reflection worksheet that's in front of you all, I'm going to read this. We do best in our learning through repetition and regularly reviewing things, keeping it in front of us all the time. So as we go throughout the year, you'll hear me read this out every single time so that we really have a grounded understanding of what is expected of us as social workers. So competency number 3, which is to engage anti-racism, diversity, equity, and inclusion in social work practice, is the following. Social workers understand how racism and oppression shape human experiences and how these two constructs influence practice at the individual, family, group, organizational, and community levels, and in policy and research. Social workers understand the pervasive impact of white supremacy and privilege and use their knowledge, awareness, and skills to engage in anti-racist practice. Social workers understand how diversity and intersectionality shape human experiences and identity development and affect equity and inclusion. The dimensions of diversity are understood as the intersectionality of factors including but not limited to age, caste, class, color, culture, disability and ability, ethnicity, gender identity and expression, generational status, immigration status, legal status, marital status, political ideology, race, nationality, religion and spirituality, sex, sexual orientation, and tribal sovereign status. Social workers understand that this intersectionality means that a person's life experiences may include oppression, poverty, marginalization, and alienation, as well as privilege and power. Social workers understand the societal and historical roots of social and racial injustices and the forms and mechanisms of oppression and discrimination. Social workers understand cultural humility and recognize the extent to which a culture's structures and values, including social, economic, political, racial, technological, and cultural exclusions, may create privilege and power resulting in systemic oppression. There's a lot there. There's a lot to unpack. We can only do so much in our courses. And so, to help fill in those gaps, we invite speakers to come in every month and to share their lived experiences. Speakers that represent a diverse array of positionalities in our community. So, this particular month, I'm very, very excited and honored to invite Toshira Garraway into our virtual space and to share her lived experience. By way of introduction, I just want to share a little bit about Toshira. Toshira is a community organizer, certified life coach, and founding member of Family Supporting Families Against Police Violence, a coalition advocating for the healing of those who've lost loved ones to police violence. Toshira came into community organizing through her own personal experience of losing a loved one to police violence and has led many marches and rallies in Minnesota. By supporting families through their darkest moments, Family Supporting Families Against Police Violence empowers families to seek change, justice, accountability, and healing. Been following Toshira for several years now, showing up. I'm hoping she's like, I didn't recognize you, Nick, because she probably would have thought I was stalking her this whole time. But following her for quite a while, my wife and I showing up at different rallies and demonstrations and marches, and we leave every time quite inspired, Toshira, by your voice and just your stance and not just your stance in advocacy. We talk to students about advocacy, but your stance alongside families. I think that's what stands out to me the most. Is if anyone follows Toshira on any of her social media platforms, what you'll notice is she walks alongside families. And so, Toshira, I thank you for being here and for taking some time to talk to us about your story. And I'm going to turn this over to you. Nobody tuned in to listen to me talk, so we'll let you talk and you let us know along the way. Feel free to pause or ask questions or anything like that along the way.
Awesome. Well, I just want to thank you so much, Nick, again, and all of you for taking time out to hear from me. And this is this means a lot to me based on the fact that it's literally something that I've lived through. Um, it started when I was 23 years old. And well, it started before that because before my fiance and also the father of my son, his life was stolen. Um, there was things that happened leading up to that. So it started for me at a young age, and I'm 39 years old. And so this has been a part of my life, but so it means a lot to be here and for me to be able to share my experience. And one thing that I always say, I think what keeps me I know what keeps me grounded is what was revealed to my heart some years ago is that everyone does not have the same experiences. And so, but what we have to do or should do as human beings, is respect and try to have compassion and empathy for someone else's experience, even if you have not experienced it yourself. It doesn't take away from what someone else has endured and gone through. So, I had to understand on my journey, and as now being considered a community leader, uh, leading by example. A lot of people follow what I do and the things that I say and things like that. And so I just had to learn, there's a lot of people that have not lost their loved one in the same way that I lost my loved one. And this is the arena, unfortunately, where you kind of don't know what it's like until you know what it's like. And when you know what it's like, it's that saying that may sound so cliche, but I literally, seriously, and even when I talk and work with other families, um I wouldn't wish this on my worst enemy. What happened to my family and what I have seen happen to many families that you know about, but a lot of families that you have never heard of. So the families that you've probably heard of is George Floyd. I work closely with his family, and Dante Wright and Amir Locke, Breonna Taylor, Eric Gardner. Those families that, Philando Castile, those families that made it into the, I would say, I don't know, mainstream media. um but then there's a whole bunch of families that did not, and that was intentional, and I believe strategic. But to go into my circumstance, and particularly August 19th, 2009, the father of my, now he was 3 years old, but he was 19 years old at the time. He was pulled over by the St. Paul police. And when he got pulled over, according to the witnesses that were in the car, um, when the officer walked up to the window, he looked in, he seen Justin, and he pulled his gun out. When he pulled his gun out, Justin then, he did drive off. When Justin drove off, he did hit a concrete pillar. When he hit the concrete pillar, he got out and he ran on foot. When he ran on foot, um, some hours later, Justin was found dead in a recycling facility out in Evergrove Heights, Minnesota. What led my family to critically believe that the St. Paul police was responsible for Justin's murder is quite a bit of substantial things that we found out along the way. Um, I now have a lawsuit against, out of 15 years, I have a lawsuit against the city of St. Paul, as well as Hennepin County, which was the medical examiner's office that basically helped cover up the murder that happened to Justin. Uh, the night that Justin came up missing, our family was told that Justin was in a car accident and missing from the scene of the accident, but we were never told that he initially got pulled over. We found that out later. We also experienced, they told us it was one location when it actually happened in a whole different location. We went out and we looked for Justin because at that point, law enforcement was not looking for Justin. And so his mother ended up driving to look for him, and she found his car on her own. When she found his car, she attempted to drive over it because she's seen his vehicle. She knows his car. When she attempted to do that, his mother and his grandmother, 65 years old, was pulled over at gunpoint. When they got pulled over at gunpoint, they were told to give up their cell phones, and they refused to do that. And that's when they drew the guns on them. And then she had asked, well, if he ran in that direction, please let me go in the area, which was in the Midway Shopping Center at that time, and let me call out for him, and I know if he hears my voice, he'll come out. They said no. They refused to do it. And so then at that point, they followed her home to make sure she dropped her mom home, and then they followed her home. At that point, it was a African American officer. His name was Raymar Davis. He walked up to Tanya. Tanya is Justin's mom. I was on the phone, and he said, "Tell Justin, if you know where he is, tell him to turn himself in, because I know that there's a few officers that have it out for him, and I'm afraid for his safety." Now the reason that he said that was because 7 days before Justin was found in the trash, brutally beaten all over. 7 days before that, he got pulled over by the St. Paul police. They had checked his car. They didn't find anything. And there was like a dispute because he was upset because they pulled him over, checked his car, didn't find anything. They ended up taking him to jail for like disorderly conduct, and they towed his car. I want to let you guys know that during that time, the St. Paul Police Department did get the gang task unit got shut down because they were illegally taking minority people, and specifically taking their cars and seizing them illegally, their money, jewelry. Specifically, they were doing this to minority people. And so I believe from everything is that they were trying to take his car, because Justin drove a really nice car, and he did put the rims on it. And so ultimately, after he got pulled over, and they took his car, they took him to jail. His mother and I hired an attorney, and we were able to get him out and get his car released. But I remember the lady at the impound lot said this is rare. We rarely, once people get their cars taken, we rarely see them get it released. When he got out, he told me he seen some of the officers, and they were like, I just remember him saying they were mad, like, baby, they were mad, they were upset. I don't know why they're bothering me, but they were angry because I was getting out. And then and so after all of that happened, and then he had a knot on his head. I guess they had beat him the week 7 days before that. That in that same interaction, they had beat him, and he had marks and a lump on his head from that interaction. 7 days, fast forward, 7 days later, he gets pulled over by the St. Paul police, and he ends up dead in the trash, brutally beaten all over. Um, so after they were dishonest with us about the location of where it happened, pulled his mother over at gunpoint that night, and his 65-year-old grandmother would not allow her over there. After the African American officer stated that he was afraid for Justin's safety. After they did not initially tell us that he was pulled over originally, that he was just in an accident and missing from the scene. After all of that happened, we then started getting the runaround. We found out he was deceased, and we started getting the runaround with his body, and they wouldn't ship his body in and all this stuff because we wanted to see him. When we finally did get a chance to see him, we walked into the mortuary. And I forgot to tell you guys also that night that also officers answered Justin's cell phone that night as well. And the witnesses that were in the car told us that, so they were leaving Perkins that used to be in the Midway Shopping Center. And one of the passengers in the car said specifically that they seen Justin put his cell phone in his pocket before he drove off, and then they got behind him and pulled him over. And so, and also another witness told me that the police went around her to specifically pull Justin over. So that's what makes me believe strongly that it was tied into the incident that happened the week before. Moving forward, at that point, that's when we finally got his body after they just was spinning us around for a while. When we got his body, we walked into the mortuary. Justin's skull was cracked in half. Justin's head was the size of a basketball. Justin's eyes were punched in. Justin wrist was detached from his arms, where you can see that he had handcuffs on. uh Justin had dog bites on his body. Justin was, uh in my heart, he was lynched. Justin, I had never seen anything like this. I still see the images in my mind of how he was found all these years later. The way that he looked was horrific. Um, and me knowing Justin, guys, they told us that Justin's phone was in his trunk. Justin had loudspeakers in his trunk. There was no way he put his phone in his trunk. And if he's going to take off and run, he's not going to stop and pop his trunk with loudspeakers and say, oh, let me put this in here while I'm running or whatever. And I'm afraid. And so at that point, when we started, we just could not believe the way that we seen his body. And I have pictures of his body that are right here in front of me right now. But the way that we seen Justin, it was the most inhumane thing I had ever seen in my entire life. So at that point, we started requesting the videos from the local area. They would refuse to give us or let us watch the videos. They told us that Justin got in a car accident. He ran, he got in a dumpster, and he just laid there, and didn't get out and let the recycling truck pick him up. And that's how he ended up there. So we said as a family, okay, well, where are all these lacerations, and why is his head the size of a basketball? Where's all this stuff coming from? Like, it's a clear beating that took place. And at that point, we started requesting the video footage, but then we were met with, they would literally follow me. They would follow his mom. They would sit outside his mother's house. They would sit outside my house. They would sit out there and watch my son. Just that's what began to happen every single time we requested the footages and all this kind of stuff. And so literally I was really afraid. I was only 23 years old at the time. Justin was 24 when he passed away. I had a 3-year-old baby at the time. My father, my family, everybody was terrified and scared for me. And so my father asked me before he passed away, Toshira, I just want you to take care of my grandson. My father was from Mississippi. My dad was 71 when he died. So he had lived during those times, the stuff that was going on back in Mississippi, back when Emmett Till got killed, things of that nature. And so he was very afraid for me, and he asked me to stop. And for many years, and I promised him I would, because I was scared, and I had a son, and I have a son, and I was scared of them harming me, but I just wanted answers. I wanted to know, why was Justin disfigured? Why would they not let us see the videos? Why were they declining over and over? And we were pleading. Like, Justin had people that loved him dearly. He had a son, he had me, he had his mom and his brothers and sisters and his grandma. He had people that truly loved him. And we just wanted answers, like anybody else in the world would want answers if something like this happened to their loved one. And so every time we would try to get answers, we were met with intimidation or some form of harassment. And you got to remember, this was back in '09. So this was before it was a Black Lives Matter or movement or anywhere to turn. So I did not, myself, as well as his mother, we did not have much support at that time. This is when things were quiet. Nobody really talked about these kind of circumstances and situations. So and they worked very, very hard to cover things up. When we did see a video, it went blank right after. And another thing, they told us they never chased Justin. Witnesses saying they seen him right behind Justin. That's what the video shows before it goes blank. We weren't able to see the video until a long time later, but the video, it literally goes blank, so it's tampered with. So these are the things that I endured. So I was quiet for a while, but then Clark got killed. Then Philando got killed. I did not go out there at first. My sister went out there. I was still pretty traumatized. They did a number on me, guys, as far as the intimidation, and also the promise that I made to my father. So my sister went out first when Philando and Jamar and those guys got killed, but I didn't have the strength in me. I'm still devastated, but I was much more in my grief at that time, and I just didn't have it in me to go out there. So then um later they were holding community barbecues and stuff for Philando. So I ended up going out, and I would meet Philando mom at that point, and I met Jamar Clark's sister at that point, and I began to come out. But then someone by the name of Phil Quinn was killed by the St. Paul police, and they had like an open forum, and I went and I told my story. And from that day, I started speaking publicly, but I was terrified out of my mind. As I did that, I began to meet other more families beyond Jamar and Philando. I was meeting other families that were coming, they were saying my loved one got murdered too by law enforcement here in Minnesota. And so as I was doing that, I began to think like we have little to no support for families specifically that have lost their loved ones in this manner, at the hands of law enforcement. So I started a support group specifically where families could have a safe space where they could come and share their stories, which now is a nonprofit organization, but it started off just as a safe space for families to come share their realities, their truth, and their stories, and just have a safe space. And it's just be in a different arena, because it's different when I can explain that later, but it's different when you lose your loved ones at the hands of law enforcement versus in any other way in the community. So after I started the support group, the library ended up asking for donations where I was holding the support groups, and I needed to raise money. So what I did, as I was working a full-time, a part-time job, and a single mother, I began to sell soul food dinners every single weekend out of my kitchen with my mother, to be able to raise money so that I could give donations to the library, the Freedom Library on the east side of St. Paul, to be able to hold space there for our families. As I was doing that, George Floyd got killed. So when George Floyd got killed, I literally went from uh, doing the support groups, serving food out of my kitchen every week, and selling plates. I literally went from that to uh, I went forward, and I began to somehow I went to the front lines. And when I went to the front lines, so by this time, from holding the support groups and George Floyd gets killed, I had about 7 or 8 families. When George Floyd got killed, something was triggered in a lot of the families. And I went from that to I went from 7 families. By the end of the summer, I was at about 25 families. Now I serve about 50 families through the organization. Um, so basically I went to the front lines because I started organizing. So I started organizing the what the spirit had told me, what I felt in my heart was go out. And when I seen that happen to Justin, the public lynching, when I seen that happen to George Floyd, when I seen the public lynching that I saw with my own eyes, um, I knew that I wanted to go and tell Justin's story. But what was in my heart was not to just go and tell Justin's story, go tell all of their stories. And because I believe in my heart that Justin's life is no more than George Floyd's life, and George Floyd's life is no more than Justin's life, and Justin's life is no more than Cordell Handy's life, and Cordell Handy's life is no more than Justin's life. Their lives are equally important, and they equally deserve to have their truths told. And so I brought the other families with me, and I would organize every single day. And literally, I would get phone calls from all kinds of media outlets that wanted to interview all the rest of our families. I began to hold press conferences. And all this stuff I was just learning as I was going. I began to organize the big marches and the big protests, and the rallies that a lot of you have seen in community. I began to organize all of those things, and I literally would go home every day and I would break down because I truly and honestly, I didn't know what I was doing. I had no clue how to do this stuff, or I mean, I'm not a expert organizer. I didn't go to school to be an organizer. It was literally what the abilities that were given to me to just do this, do this, do this, do this. And by the grace and the mercy, I say God, but by the grace and mercy of God, I have been able to pull off some of the largest protests here, peaceful protests and marches here in the state of Minnesota. And so um as I was able to do that, I ended up becoming a nonprofit because people seen the work that was being done, and the way that I was holding the support groups for the families. So then I ended up getting donations, and I've been able to help families pay for funerals. So, like when Amir Locke got killed, I was able to go and help his mother and family pay to for his funeral costs. We've been able to help families with birthdays and date of death. We host those on behalf of impacted families. And the reason why we do these things, the goal for me was to be the support that I did not have when Justin lost his life. I didn't have the support, and neither did Justin's mom. But I had a 3-year-old son, and my whole life was dismantled. You have to understand that Justin was the other. We were engaged to be married. I'll show you guys our ring. That's the ring that he bought me. I don't know if I got it the right way. Okay, so he got me that ring. It's a full he I look, I told him, I was like, I want that one. So but I've been wearing it for 15 years now. And so he was really the love of my life. Um I think about him every day. Um and I hope that he's proud. And my goal is to just continue to help people that are hurting in the same way, and being the support that I didn't have. And I understand, there's so many parts. I stand with families when they go to court, and I've held protests and rallies to bring attention to, like, when Dante Wright got killed. I do sometimes have to work with the Attorney General Keith Ellison, if cases are assigned to him. I've worked with the governor. I've worked with a lot of legislators, including Melissa Hortman, who was killed a few months ago. I worked very closely with Melissa Hortman, um, to get different laws passed in honor of our loved ones. And so, in a whole summary, that's pretty much um, how I ended up in this, and how I ended up in this arena, and the work that I now carry out in the community. I don't just do police, supporting the families with police violence. I also have been pulled in other directions. I was able to successfully help the young man's family who her son was found in the landfill. I guess the father was responsible, but uh, he killed his son and disposed of him. So I was able to, before media or anybody got involved, I was able to basically go and talk to the chief of the Columbia Heights Police and really get on top of them about finding this child. And due to that, me and Nakimi Levy Armstrong, she's another strong activist in the community as well, and we've been pulled in other directions, and so we help families from multiple things. I did change my organization's name to Family Supporting Families Against Violence, so it's not particularly police violence anymore. It's violence in general of all human beings in every arena. um but that's pretty I've worked to bring the United Nations in to Minneapolis after the murder of George Floyd. Um, been on every court TV, CNN, everything that you could, USA Today, all of the newspapers, every media outlet that you can think of, sharing not only Justin's story, but also I get interviewed from all kinds of stuff regarding reform and all that kind of stuff all the time. So that's pretty much the bulk of how I got here and what led me to do this work. And I want to ask if you guys have any questions of me.
All right, y'all. One of the things to share we ask students to do is on this critical reflection sheet. We ask them to what we call PAN, to pay attention now, PAN, pay attention, and so before you ask some questions or before you get a chance to kind of collect your thoughts, I just going to ask everyone to just pause and pay attention to yourselves. Um, you've listened to Toshira talk for a little bit, and you've had some feelings, you've had some thoughts, um, and your body has responded in some ways. Um, and everyone has had different responses. So just going to ask you to take a second and collect some of those thoughts, bring some awareness to the things you're thinking, bring awareness to the feelings you're having, bring awareness to your bodies, um, and then you can drop a question into the chat if you'd like. You can unmute yourself and talk if you like. Toshira.
Yeah, what I want to do is I just want to show, I have this little collage. I don't know how well you guys will be able to see it, but I want to give you a picture of Justin and me, and our kind of like a little collage. I hope you guys can see it well. Let me see. I'm going to try to, can you guys see this?
Yeah.
That's me and him and the baby. I hope you guys get, I know it's kind of, you know what I thought about, Nick, after I said, you know what, I should have sent you some stuff and had you do like a share screen where you
Mm.
could have pulled it up, just the pictures of.
Well, let me see here. Let me see if you sent that to me when we first got connected. You sent me some things.
Okay, let's see. Oh, I think you can see it a little better. Oh, it looks like a blur.
Yeah, it's just trying to get caught up to your camera, I think.
Okay, wait, let me see. Put this on it. Oh, this is wonky.
Here, I can share my screen. You sent me this stuff. Here, let me share my
Oh,
screen. Yeah.
okay.
You give yourself some credit. You did all that. It's me that
Oh,
didn't have.
okay. Well, I thought about the idea. I was like, oh, we could. I like people to get a idea of who they're looking at or talk. Who we had this
Uh,
whole conversation about Justin. So
as I'm sharing this, you all see these pictures now, right? It's not sharing it? Let's see, what am I sharing?
I can see it, Nick.
Oh, okay, now you can see it. Okay. All right. Let me get over there and see if I can scroll. Okay. I see, Shakila, you've got a hand up.
Yes, thank you guys. Well, first, I just like to thank you so much for your presentation, Tashima. I'm sorry for your loss, and I really appreciate you bringing this to us. I just want to know, how can community members support your organization?
well, one of the major ways is to connect. You can email me. I love to connect with people, whoever wants to support in whatever capacity that you have. And the email address is F as in Frank, S as in Sam, F as in Frank, A as in Apple, P as in Paul, V as in Victor. So it's the first letter in family supporting families against police violence. So FSFAPV at gmail.com. That's one of the best ways is just to shoot an email through to that, and then I love to connect, and that's the main way for me that I like to find out if people how they would like to support.
Thank you.
Toshira, I'm wondering, I mean, there's several things you said that really have me paused and have me thinking. Both historically and present. You've talked about just some of how you're caretaking for some family members now, and then um, you were caretaking for a 3-year-old at the time of Justin's death and his murder and I was just I think sometimes we forget about the multiple hats that we all wear, but when people are going through things, like life doesn't stop. The people you care about still need things. This whole time as you're showing up for other families, you're showing up with family or for families in grief, and it's not just grief, but the families you're showing up with, it's a particular type of grief. I'm imagining most, if not all, these families they're grieving, but there's also a sense of injustice that's happening at the same time as this grieving. And you said you think about Justin every day. You're showing up for families, their own grief, frustration, anger at the injustices. You've got people in your not life who need you in different ways. That you still want to show up as a sister, as a daughter, as a mother. You shared this a little bit, but I don't know if we all fully kind of understood the physical and emotional toll showing up for other people has on somebody within the context of feeling maybe targeted, right? Some of those words you used. I'm wondering, could you say just a little bit more about this, the physical, emotional, like what for somebody who maybe is distanced from that sort of grief and that sort of anguish? Can you talk about like just what is it, to experience and carry that?
It's a lot. Um and it is honestly, I have to be, I would be remiss if I didn't say what it is for me. It's literally me praying my way through. I have to be completely transparent and honest about that. I know without a doubt. And I believe that it is only God's grace and mercy that has allowed me to do the work that I do, because even after the murder of George Floyd, I mean, there's times when I look back and I'm like, I don't even know how I did all of that, because again, I was literally organizing families every single day. And I had them out there because the goal was to get Justin's story out there. And because what I didn't want is people to just say, well, it was, and people still did it, don't get me wrong, but I felt in my heart that God had cracked a door for us by exposing the system uh, through the murder of George Floyd, that he cracked the door for the rest of us, and all the rest of us had to do was push the door. I had waited for all these years, almost 10 years after the murder of Justin, and I had to just live with what had happened. And now it was the opportunity, sadly, so sadly, it was the opportunity to finally, the world was watching Minnesota, right? And because the world was watching Minnesota, and it wasn't to take anything away from George Floyd's murder and death, it was to let everyone know that this had in fact happened to not only my family, but like so many other families. And so that was the reason why I was organizing every day. And it was like, I'm gonna be honest with you guys, I don't even think I hardly slept for damn near 2 years after the murder of George Floyd, because you got to remember, while we were in the trial for George Floyd, Dante Wright gets killed, then Amir Locke gets killed. You see what I'm saying? Oh, and Winston Smith gets killed. Now, all of these families, I'm literally by their side, holding press conferences, holding rallies and marches, because the killings was happening. It was the Laid, Tekle Sundberg. It was murders started happening like that even after the murder of George Floyd. And so it was Linnell Frazier. They were chasing the Linnell Frazier is actually the uncle of Darnella Frazier, who recorded what happened to George Floyd. They ended up killing her uncle, the Minneapolis police, in a high-speed chase in our community. And so I ended up holding actions for them. So one of the families that's been with me from the beginning, her name is Miss Ann. Her son was shot 52 times by the St. Paul police. She's been with me from the beginning, and I'm like, Miss Ann, I tell her all the time, I'm like, I don't know how I did it all. And she said, she said it was God, because that's the only thing I can relate it to, the way that I've been able to keep going. I know it cannot be off of my own strength, because it is very heavy. I have a mother that had a stroke not too long ago. I'm her full-time caregiver. I have a 19-year-old. He also lost his best friend at the hands of police as well as his dad. And so it's a lot. And then I have my own health, right? My own health, my own self. I have to, and it takes a lot of prayer, meditation. I do see a life coach. um I try to get her in at least once. I try to sometimes go twice a week, but I try to at least go once a week to see my life coach. And I go to this space. It's a place by my house where there's water, and I just go and I pray. And so it for me, honestly, I know that was a long answer, but it's really my prayer life that keeps me sustained. And prayer is literally what helps me to keep going, because otherwise, honestly, I would not be able to keep going.
Yeah, yeah, no, thank you for sharing all that. Um, Molly says she's on the call here, and she says, "Hi, Toshira. I first wanted to thank you for sharing all of this." She says, "I wanted to share that I looked up Justin's obituary on her lunch break today, um, and she was curious about what you thought about the police or police violence before Justin's murder, and maybe just and because I think that is something that can be real. There are certain vocations or professions or different people that sometimes like it can be difficult for our minds to make sense of what we're hearing and things that are going on. And so, yeah, do you have any, thoughts about that you could share with the
So
group?
I just want to make sure the question I got correct. What do I think? Like, how did I feel about it before Justin got killed? Is that
Yeah. So, well, I think I'm just interpreting here. I think so. So it says, prior to the Black Lives Matter movement, how did you feel about police violence?
actually, it was okay. So if I heard about it, of course, I thought it was wrong. But sorry to say, guys, but honestly, it really wasn't something that I. Okay, so he got killed back in '09. So back then it was just like something that just really wasn't really talked about. And I really didn't realize or understand or really truly knew what was going on, to be honest. I'm quite sure that if I known about a lot of the killings that I know about now that happened even before Justin was killed, I would have been horrified just as well as I am now. But it's just I was so young. I was 23 at the time. I had just turned 23. He had just turned 24. We just had, I mean, we were teenagers when we met each other. So it was like I was in my own little world, in my own little bubble. Back in '09, these type of things just weren't talked about. They got swept under the rug quickly. Uh, just as they tried to do to Justin, it's just Justin happened to have me who did not could not rest with what happened to him. And I'm grateful that even if it wasn't me, if it was somebody else, no one should rest when a human being gets put in the trash, and brutalized in that manner. So basically, sorry guys, basically, I didn't really think too much of it. I was in my own little world, my own little bubble. We didn't really hear about these kind of things happening. They were swept under the rug, so it was like ignorance was bliss, basically. Because it's just something that wasn't talked about, and I didn't know much about it. And I had my little family with Justin and my little baby, and I realize now that that's just kind of how a lot of people live, just in their own world. However, it's a lot more out here now than it was back then. So it's a little harder to be the ignorance is bliss ordeal because we got it. George Floyd was smack dead in our faces. So, yeah, that's pretty much my answer to that one.
Yeah. Um, you were sharing with me when we first met, Tashira, or when we had our first kind of phone conversation. You were talking about just police officers in general. Because sometimes there's some noise out there, right? There's some noise and there's some narratives that is kind of an all or nothing absolute. Would you mind just sharing a little bit about like what do you think about police officers?
Absolutely. So I believe that there's some good officers out there. I believe that there's also some people that abuse their authority. I believe that but I believe that's in every arena. I believe that it's not just one bad apple. There's quite a few bad apples. Um, but I also believe that because I have encountered people that genuinely want to go out into the community and do the right thing and serve other human beings. I believe there are some people that use white supremacy and privilege and all that kind of stuff, and they put on their uniform, and then they use that to inflict whatever harm. I do believe that as well. But I don't believe that all police officers are corrupt, but I do believe that there are a significant amount of corrupt officers. And um for me, it doesn't matter what your title is. It doesn't matter if because I have had people say to me, I know you don't like police, and it's like that's the furthest thing from the truth. I just strongly believe if you hurt, because you're asking for accountability does not mean and that you don't like an entity, because you're asking if you hurt somebody, if you mistreat somebody, if you harm another human being, and you abuse your authority. Because I have done a lot to voice accountability does not mean that I don't approve of, or I have anything against, which I and what's crazy is I have all rights to feel that way. I believe, I know in my heart that if I hated police, I would have every right to, but I literally don't. And for me, it's about just treating people with dignity and respect, no matter what your title is, no matter what you people's economic class is, what you have, what you don't have, your sexual orientation. All human beings deserve to be treated with dignity and respect, whether that be by law enforcement, a doctor, a nurse, a firefighter, whoever it is. That is what my thoughts is. Whether you're black, white, oriental, whatever you want to call it, um, I believe that people should be treating people fairly, especially if you're going out into the community and protecting you're saying that you're protecting and serving. You should be protecting and serving all human beings, and no one should be above the law. Especially if you say that you're enforcing the law, you should not be above that. You should be holding yourself to a higher standard. So that's how I look at it.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. We have about 10 minutes left, and there's a couple more questions in the chat here that I'll read out. So Francis says, thank you so much for sharing your story. I know you mentioned earlier that there's a significant difference between losing a family member at the hands of police brutality versus losing a family member from other forms of community violence. Could you say more about your experience with this difference? How do you find common ground and show up for families that have experienced other forms of violence?
Well, one, I just want to say because that's been a big thing as far as people trying to divide the two. And really what I'm trying to say is I want to see people treat people with respect all the way around the board. I don't want community members killing each other or me fearing my life from another community member, but I also don't want an officer like Derek Chauvin coming all the way from Oakdale, Minnesota, passing the Oakdale police, the St. Paul police, the Roseville police, the Maplewood police, to get all the way to Minneapolis to go sabotage the community, because he was killing people before he got to George Floyd, and he hurt a bunch of people. A 12-year-old or 14-year-old kid, he busted him up, did something, put him in a chokehold. So he was doing stuff before he even murdered George Floyd. So that's what I don't want to see. The reason that I say that it's a different ball game when you lose your loved one at the hands of law enforcement is because it's law enforcement, right? And so we know that law enforcement, if you lose your loved one at the hands of a regular civilian in the community, if everybody knows that uh that person did it, 9 times out of 10, that person is going to get held accountable. They're going to go through a court trial. They're going to do everything to get held accountable. Well, when it's law enforcement, it's a different arena, because a lot of times, and we have to be transparent about this, is that they don't get held accountable, and they get qualified immunity, and they get let off for a lot of these killings. So you have to know that the person that murdered your loved one will possibly not be legally held accountable to the fullest extent of the law. And so that's one thing that's a horrific feeling within itself, to know because of their title or because of the badge or whatever they held, they get held to a different standard. And it's not this, you would think they got held to a higher standard, but they actually get held to a lower standard. And they don't, a lot of them just get off scot-free when they kill people in the community. And so that's one of the things that's really excruciating for families, is to know that you may never see at least justice in the legal world when it comes to an officer in law enforcement, if they take the life of your loved one. Two, a lot of times we have to deal with basically, when law enforcement kills our loved ones get criminalized in the media, in the newspapers. Look at George Floyd. They criminalized him. He was a drug addict. He died off of fentanyl, and when we clearly seen, or he died off of some other drug, when we clearly seen his neck got choked out by a knee. And so all of these things happen to our loved one. They pull up their criminal history, and just basically, it's so horrible because we're already grieving the life of our loved one, but now we have to turn on the news and see that they are just basically humiliating your loved one that's already passed away. And so that's excruciating as well. And then just the lack of support, and the way that your family is treated, like you guys are just the criminals, um is way different when you lose your loved one at the hands of law enforcement. And then, as you're trying to fight for your loved one and get answers, a lot of times, if law enforcement is involved, it's like, that's the reason why I have the lawsuit that I have right now, is because I was trying to obtain videos and all this kind of stuff that was deserving to my family, and it's they're not giving up the stuff that's deserving to families. And 5 families just won a lawsuit not too long ago, because the BCA, that's supposed to do investigations on officer murders, were not giving the families the videos and all the stuff that the families needed for the cases. So that's different from when you lose somebody by a civilian. They're gonna lock that person up if they know who it is, and they're not gonna withhold evidence and things from the families and all that kind of stuff, and dehumanize your loved one in the newspapers. So that's the difference that we have to face. It's really, it's excruciating.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. There's, let's see, I'm going back to the chat here. There's a question. I think you said you've maybe mentioned this a little bit. Somebody was wondering if there were any repercussions for the officers that killed Justin.
No, and the only repercussions that so they worked really hard. They, like, even you could probably look it up and find it, but they really switched the whole story around about what happened to Justin, made it seem like it was an accidental death. They, like I said, edited the videos, crop videos, did all kinds of stuff. So to the public eye, it looked like he just died accidentally. So this is why for 15 years I had to fight as hard as I am fighting. And 15 years later, not even getting any level of accountability that's deserving. But literally, um, I'm fighting to right now because they wouldn't give up the footages and stuff. And so I'm suing them for that. And then we're gonna go back and do the wrongful death lawsuits. This opens up the door for the wrongful death. And if you can win civilly, then you can go back and try to fight for criminal, because criminal, there's no statute of limitation that goes on forever. So this is the long drawn out process. Majority of the families never receive or see any accountability or justice for officers, especially if they were, the only time we see true accountability is when like there's riots and protests. You see with George Floyd, that was the only reason why that happened is because the buildings were on fire. And so other than that, there, I mean, with Orlando's case, he was standing there, the officer still with the gun pointed at Orlando, and they still let him off. So majority of our cases, nobody's ever held accountable.
Yeah, yeah. For those who, again, students hear me say this often, you need to follow the news. You need to follow some good sources of the news. You heard Toshira mention the name Amir Locke and this family, and just over the summer, I think it was, or early in the fall, there was news stories about the officer who killed Amir Locke was being promoted
Yep.
within the department, and it was through then public response and different people leading um, that some different actions kind of happened. Definitely not some just actions, but better than somebody being promoted up and getting put in different positions. And so just to reiterate what you're saying there, Toshira, about just 2-3 months ago, this was in the news. And so as students, these are the sorts of things we want to be aware of. And again, the reason we want to be connected to the news is because there are families, there are individuals like Toshira that are reading this in the news, and then they're showing up, and their families and their kids are having to go to school and carrying stress and carrying re-traumatized experiences and memories. And if we're living in that bubble, and we're not aware and we're not connected and we're not listening, we show up across from families and individuals and kids who are trying to manage all of this. It should never be lost on us that at age 23, at age 44, I can't wrap my mind around things, let alone being an 8, 9, 10-year-old who's trying to, or even younger, trying to make sense of some of these actions. The young girl who filmed George Floyd's death, and just all of the things that people have to deal with. Toshira, I really, multiple people said thank you for this time, really noting your courage and strength. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Michelle was kind enough to drop your email in the chat there. So if anyone wants to follow up with you afterwards, I encourage you to do so. As we keep saying, follow Toshira. If you're looking for some of those sources of information so that you're connected to what's going on in different communities, I highly encourage you to look her up and to look up Family Supporting Families. Is it now Family Supporting Families Against Violence, or is the police still in there in your social media piece?
On the social media, it's Family Supporting Families Against Police Violence. That name is still up there. Okay. So, and that's where you guys will see a bunch of where I post the flyers if you want to come to marches or the protests that we hold. And also on Instagram is FSFAPV. You just look that up, and that's where I post we have an Instagram page too. So I'm sharing the flyers for any of the events that we're hosting. But yep, on Facebook, Family Supporting Families Against Police Violence, you can follow that page and you'll see there's always events and stuff that we're doing. And you guys, a community is always welcome.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you, Toshira. Toshira, before we sign off, would you, because again, I know you're taking care of your mom. There's continued stress. You have this lawsuit. We just have the just things happening all the time. Life doesn't start, the work stops, the work doesn't stop, the memories don't stop. You talked about that. Can I pray for you as we
Absolutely.
Yeah. Father God, I thank you. Lord, I thank you for Toshira. Lord, I thank you for your spirit, just giving her strength as she testifies to what gets her through day to day. And she gives you that credit. Lord, we pray that you would continue to be that strength and that anchor. You would continue to be the wind beneath her wings. Lord, as she cares for her mother, we ask for rest and strength in her body and in her mind and emotions to do that hard work. God, we just pray that you continue to surround her and her organization and the work she does, these families that she supports. God, would you continue to raise up support, continue to to illuminate, continue to raise voices, continue to do movements and works in communities that affirm and validate those who are hurting. Lord, would you raise up people who would be responsive and compassionate and just show up for families. Um, Lord, I pray that your spirit would be prompting and convicting and just helping us to become aware of what's around us, the injustices, the trauma, the pain. Lord, help us to just have spirits, to have ears that hear, to have eyes that see those that we interact with, that we could see individuals for the creation that you've made them to be. Lord, that you would prompt us to be interacting with dignity and respect across, well, for everybody, but especially across differences, those things that are hard. God, be kind to us as we say goodbye now. Lord, just extend your grace for Toshira as she extended her emotional and mental energy to share with us and to let us in a little bit. God, we give you thanks for community. We give you thanks for binding us together in love. Help us to love one another and to love you this evening. In Jesus' name, amen.
In Jesus' name, amen. Thank you. Thank you so much, Nick. Thank you, everybody.
You bet. You bet. All right. Take care.
All right. Have a good night, everyone. Thank you. Bye-bye.